This lad, Fermin Lopez, and maybe people are thinking, who, if you watch your European football and you watch La Liga and Barcelona, a real talent there. And also people will be thinking, like, not a chance. What are you talking about with this kid? So just to give a bit of background, we'll go for the transfer stuff a little early. The world and his wife know that Barcelona like Luis Diaz. The world and his wife also know that Barcelona are skint and struggling to register the players they've got and in legal battles and everything like that. So there's only so many levers in life you can pull. So you're thinking, why are we mentioning this kid? Our information is that Barcelona have naturally talked to Liverpool. There's no doubt everyone knows that. And in part of that, Liverpool have gone, okay, a deal could be done, but we want Fermin Lopez, an attacking midfielder, can play in the centre as well. A real talent from the games I've seen, Bart. I am really excited to see how you profile this kid because 21 years old, nearly 22, played in midfield, attacking midfield wide. The footage I've seen, brilliant on the ball, and I'm not underselling that. So I'm genuinely intrigued to see what the metrics say about this kid.
So yeah, it's always like playing time, right? Barcelona do play twice a week. Okay, so there is opportunity for a starter to play significant minutes in the 4,000, 3,500, 4,000, which would marry up with some of our Liverpool players. Let's get out like this guy is not in that sphere. Now that could be because they're being smart and they're not overplaying it. Fair.
Yeah.
Last season he made 31 starts. So he played 31 times, started 14 and completed 16 90s, and he just short 1,500 minutes. So that's just over half the games he was involved in. He finished. So that's a little thing to do, and you'd expect that potentially to go on a bit, right? This is where I'm slightly confused. I will have to go and check. He must have got injured. So he's done 7, 8, 9 minutes this season. Played 20 games. Only completed just short of 9 90s, and only started 7. So he's actually come down a bit. So that's something to be thinking about. But having said that, team success when he's on the pitch, their XG per 90 goes up. Last season by 0.75 and this season by 1.2. So that's an interesting thing to think about when he's a kid, right? And he's also not played a lot this year. So, but again, it's a bit hard. He's got one of the high ones as well, but because he comes on, the game's broken, he can kind of do stuff. He can take more risks, which could be the case. I'm not sure. I'm not a La Liga expert. If you look at some of his standards, so XG, if we talk about that per 90, so he is at, so we always say magic, right? XG, XJ combined, 0.6 and above is what we want for our front four. He's at 0.64 this season, which is very nice. 0.54 last season, so he has improved. Okay, and that is not penalty as well because he's clean up old enough. So that has improved. That's something to think. Okay, that's something to think about there. That's good. We get into our metrics now. The information we have is he's going to be playing an attacking midfield role, right? We're not going to ask him to play midfield, right? So we'll stick him on the attack, the AM, which would be comparison with any of our white forwards. So defensively, 86% of the tackles, which again is kind of not what we ask our forwards to do. But not a bad thing. He's happy to be involved in defending, but we typically ask him to intercept block, right? We don't really ask him to do clearances in aerial. So he's 68% off blocks. So potentially go higher. When the Barcelona DNA, if it still exists, was normally pretty high press anyway. So you probably should have that ingrained in with the academy. If we look at progressive passes received, he's not very high. So he's not receiving the ball very high. Which is 47% high. So that's his position you would expect to be in the middle area rather than high. Okay, middle third to be high. Touches the penalty box. 62nd percentile, so not as many as you would expect one of our forwards to take. Progressive carries, doesn't carry the ball, does pass the ball though. 70th percentile for progressive passes. Pass completion, 92nd percentile for a forward. 83 is actually really high for a forward, for an attacking. Typically ours are around the mid-70s to 70s. So 83 is good. And then pass attempt, again, that's a little bit low. So he's doing stuff. He's getting the ball. He passes it, okay, not a high volume, but when he does pass it, it's accurately, and he's not carrying it. So what is he doing when he's in those boxes? Well, he's clearly taking the shots on, because he's in 96th percentile for non-penalty goals. Shots is in 81st percentile, so it's nearly 3 shots a game, which is in that level that we want. Okay. He's in assist 90th percentile, so when he's making a pass, it's a goal scoring action. And then he's got shot creating actions, though he's only 70th percentile. So there are some things to work on, but he does have some nice metrics there to compare with. Now, if we're comparing with, let's look at some players. You're saying he's going to play, what would you say, left, right? Where would you suggest?
The way I would describe him a little bit, and obviously it's a different culture, a different game, but also almost if you think of like a 10, you know, almost like Szoboszlai, and sometimes he's played a bit deeper a little bit as well, which is why he's probably got 2 profiles when you look at him, almost like the way Szoboszlai plays 10 for us, but has also become an 8. And I know people will be saying Barter play a 4-3-3, so it's a different style. But that would be the best you could almost compare him to in that sense.
So I've got many, because we did so many forwards. I haven't actually got many of our own forwards on the deck. But if you look at him compared to Cody, Cody is obviously going to play the attacking mid slightly wider, but still, it's the 3 of them could be fairly interchangeable. To be honest with you, it's not that much different. I think he compares fairly all right. You know, I mean, there's a bit of an area here in terms of dribbles and aerials. One, okay, fair enough. But touches, Lopez is more. Pass completion is higher. Progressive passes attempted higher than Cody. Cody's got more shot creating actions, fair. But in terms of non-penalty XG and XA, they're comparable. But assist, Lopez has got more. So. Yeah, there's things to like about that. If you were comparing him to Jota, there's some things he does better than Jota, surprisingly non-penalty goals. But the stuff that Jota does in terms of carries, take-ons, touches is higher. And Jota obviously creates more shot creating actions because he plays down. This is when he's playing as an AM, not as a forward. So, yeah, there is I would suggest some really interesting parts to him. Comparing it to a lad we did look at, Almora, Lopez is significantly better than another lad we profiled recently, barring blocks and clearances, which is interesting. But there's a similarity in some of the things they're looking at there. If we look at dashboard for Lopez, it's typically in these areas. So Barcelona, as you'll see on the pass network, are really high, right? They are up the pitch high. This is typically second half Liverpool, not first half. And so he's operating in these areas that we would want him to operate. He's got lots of red coming in and out of him in this game, which is good. That's high amount of threat, high amount of passing success. But going back to our volume question, he's not involved as much as some of our forwards are, right? So when we are on the game, when we have high amount of possession, typically our front four do have a lot. Like typically, if you look at what Barcelona did in the game, they had just sort of 10 touches or passes per minute. He is registering, in some cases, less than 2. So he's not necessarily involved in all of the action. And if you look at his passing chains, he's involved in the very low. But having said that, in the right areas, he is involved with progressive passes in and out of the right half space and zone 14. So so when he does get it in those areas, he does have an impact. It's just the volume of getting it in those areas for him to do that is maybe down to a passing player. So he was on ball for 60% of the possession. Well, I think we might want a bit higher, to be honest with you, for our players. 94% pass rate, though, in this game. That's pretty damn
Nice.
good. Dual success of 50 for our, which is really good for, our front forwards. That's exceptional, to be fair. Where was he in this area? So he was operating just in this right half space, which is where all the passes were coming in. So that kind of makes sense. And if we look at his wagon wheel, he's bang on the metrics for all of them. So it's not slow on him. It's just bang on there. Okay.
Yeah.
That's getting there pretty good. We look at threat. Okay. So what does he do off the ball? First of all, stopped 100% of the threat coming at him. Nice. So that tackling stuff and that was in a really high percentile really comes through in this. He operates in these areas here. So Barcelona created, with the limited touches he had, they created 20% of their threat in the areas that he was involved in. And you could even argue he's probably had something to do with the 10% in zone 14 as well. So that is a high proportion of threat from a very limited amount of touches that he's managed to create. That's something to be thinking, okay, that could be really interesting. First half alone, he's up at 20%, drops off second half. But that's a really interesting thing to see. So when you do get him the ball in the right areas, he seems to make things happen, even if he's not directly involved. Off the ball, he's operating in these areas. So that's not, 5 and fits, just sort of 10% defensive actions in those areas, which is, to be fair, fairly balanced across the front 5 boxes. It's not something to write home about, but it's not a weakness. All right, if there was a 0 there, then that's a problem, but it isn't. That's fine. XG, he helped create some. He created some on his own there. He created 0.24, which is basically a big chance for a regular play. Okay, so that's fairly good, and he was good in the half an hour period before, so the 15-minute before half time and 15-minute after. So that kind of section is when he was dominant. Shots, 3 shots. What I like about this, all central. Yeah, all between the posts. None of this, out wide rubbish that we see some of our players. I mean, obviously, Mac at the weekend slotting it in from around this area was beautiful. But generally speaking, keep it between the 2 sticks, and you've got a pretty good chance of what we would expect from a Liverpool player to do. So, I think there's some. I could potentially see why the club would be looking at this. There's a lot of elements in there where you could see they could make a case for a signing of this type, I would suggest. Very interesting profile, similar profile to some of our players, slightly more of a curator than a goal scorer, perhaps. Off the ball, okay, interesting. And maybe the on the ball, the volume of stuff is maybe opportunity, but this is Barcelona. I mean, they dominate possession, so it surprises me that he's not on the ball as much as he should be.
It's a funny one. There's stuff. It's all good points, and there's things to balance that. It's important to say that he's missed 7 games this season because of injury, so it's not huge, but that's why his minutes are down. He is a youngster as well, so they're going to use him carefully at certain times. Although I say that it's Barcelona, they sort of flog Pedri and Gavi to death, don't they? So maybe there's that into the mix as well. But they seem to be mindful with this kid, with Fermin Lopez as well. If you look, as you said, at the profile, he's played 3 real positions. I mean, this season he's played that attacking midfielder, as you can clearly see. He's also played in the sort of wide central role, but also you've seen it in the Champions League as well. He's been wide left at certain times. It's almost like Harvey Elliott on the other side, if that makes sense, a real spread, and so good on the ball. I mean, 12 goal contributions in 1,300 minutes this season, Bart, is pretty special. And for those that can't see it there, comparing him to attacking midfielders and wingers, thinking about his age, tackles 86 percentile, blocks 68. So why it's slightly different to interceptions we look for ours, there's a clear work ethic there, no doubts about it. Pass completion, 92nd percentile. But what really stands out is when we're looking at it, For his non-penalty goal and XAG, 93rd percentile, 90th percentile in assists, non-penalty XG, 94th percentile. Like, all his metrics in the attacking area are green, which also tells me, I bet if you click that midfield tab next to it, I bet everything's green. Yeah, look at that.
Yeah.
Everything heads up against standing midfield to pretty much people 99th percentile across the board. And even in terms of his carries, takeoffs, I think they're the lowest there is 94th. So if you slot him as a midfielder there, you know, it's just all green. And even as an attacking midfield and winger, it is largely green. Let's be clear on that. But with all that in the mix, from that profile, an attacking midfielder, so you would be thinking more maybe like as a Bosley type, shall we say, a one that could play wide as well. A little bit like Bosley could possibly play on the left wing, that's fair to say. Maybe reminds me a little bit of different style of player, but Xavi Simons, we looked at that one who can play the attacking midfielder for Leipzig. This boy, he's at Barca. If this boy was in a deal for Luis Diaz, what would you be thinking?
It's interesting, isn't it? Because you look at him there, he's kind of got potential, right?
Yeah.
He could play. Here you're thinking, attacking wise, he's absolutely fine. But defensively, that's another story for a midfielder because they are some not good defensive stats for a midfielder, right? So, to be frank, he's not going to get another dom defensively in our system, right? Attacking wise, 100%. But defensively, he's just not going to get in there. So, yeah, it's interesting. I think the price would be a real key indicator. I think there is some, I don't know if it's high either. Getting physical metrics for La Liga players is really difficult. So, yeah, it would be price really suits the other data they had. I like the fact that we're looking again at that 10 left kind of combination, right?
Yeah.
Bit like Kuno at Wolves. But to be fair, this lad at over 0.6 XG and XA combined per 90. That's some pretty impressive stats for a kid at 21. Involve, increasing his team's XG by, nearly 1 or an average considerably whenever he's on the pitch. So, yeah, I think there is some elements. It's just whether they think that this defensive output, whether it's that and that, whether you can combine those two profiles, you get actually what they're looking at, or whether it is one is not. Yeah, I'm just saying. To be in our midfield, you've got to be defensively good. To be fair, to be in our wide areas, you've got to be defensively good. So, yeah, that would be my only concern. Other than that, though, there is a lot of potential there. Yeah, I suppose it's, and this is interesting because let's say he's in that Diaz deal. Let's just say he is, yeah. He's coming in to basically take Diaz's positioning in the squad. Or Cody's going to become first choice. Lopez is the backup, right? If you look at it like that, I can see that. I can see that. If you're looking for him to come as a first choice, I'm not sure where he fits in because he's not as good as Cody at the moment, right? So that's just, can he push him? For sure. If you ask him to come in to compete with Dom, he's not going to compete with Dom. Yeah, I think it's an interesting one. The price has been really key for me.
Yeah, which is probably, for all the players we've ever previewed on TMM, the hardest, because all we know is that Liverpool asked about him when Barcelona asked about Luis Diaz. So how the money works on either side is debatable, especially for a young kid with these metrics and talent. But I tell you what, people, if there is a deal to be done for if Luis Diaz departs to Barcelona and Fermin Lopez is coming the other way, me and Bart's would not be too sad at all. There is talent with this kid. So one to keep an eye on over the summer.